Now, time is a very precious commodity, and how we choose to spend it can really illustrate what type of legacy we plan to leave. Now, during their second careers and eventual retirement in Arizona, Harold and Dorothy maintained a strong partnership. They were very charitable in their mentorship, and they built a legacy worthy to be proud of. But let's hear it from them.
We had just got married and came out here in March of 1956. In fact, it was Good Friday of that year when we came out here, and but just desert. You didn't have all the greenery and stuff. It was strictly desert, and
cotton fields.
There were lots of cotton fields and date trees and orange groves abounded here. It was more country. So you could go for miles and you wouldn't see any houses or anything like that because there were fields. And the one thing that was they had a lot of pecan trees here, and they had iceberg lettuce. I think iceberg lettuce was a crop that was mostly grown in Arizona at that time. It was a big business. So with the iceberg lettuce, the pecan trees were all along the canal banks, and people gathered the pecans and they sold those. And what else was going on? And like I said, cotton. There was cotton fields all over the place. And I later found out that the cotton that Arizona grew was a long, stable cotton, I guess Egyptian type, and it was the premier, I guess, cotton. When we went to England years later, that was, I think they got cotton over there. And so it was called long, stable cotton. They also had a lot of mullet that they grew for, I guess, for the cows and stuff. And they had on the other side of Tempe there, they had the cattle. Was big business here in Arizona at the time, big money, and of course where the cattle were wasn't the most pleasant smelling place, but it was big business. I mean, all the well-heeled people came here to Arizona because of that, and the cotton was sold on the stock exchange. And I had a temporary job at the time, and they would have me go and take cotton samples to where they were bidding on it. And that was an eye-opener for the stock exchange, to bid on Arizona cotton, Arizona long stable cotton. There's a lot of things that and Scottsdale was the place where movie stars and everybody went, and it was, you could go there and movie stars would be walking down the street. You wouldn't even know who they were unless you recognized them. They were just like ordinary people at that particular time. At the time when we came here, Camelback was the end of Phoenix. Blacks lived mostly in South Phoenix.
That was the only place they lived.
Yeah, it was in South Phoenix. Lower Buckeye Road. They had on Buckeye Road, they have like a little, for entertainment, they had some little honky-tonk places with window in. They did have off of 7th Street in the canal, they had this, it was a nightclub, I think. It wasn't a nightclub, it was a hall or something. I think it eventually, I think, caught fire and burned up, but that was the place where they had all the live entertainment, and you would have people like Fats Domino would come there, and all the name entertainers would come there. I forgot the name of the Riverside Ballroom it was called, and that was where you would have people in Las Vegas and California and all the well-to-do black entertainers would go there. And other people used it too, not just black people, but that's where if you had a name band, somebody like Nat King Cole or somebody, that was very famous. They would come to Riverside Ballroom.
What's the guy that you went up on the piano?
That was Fast Domino. They always seemed like they always started a fight near the end of everything. And this particular night, yeah, they started a fight, and I ended up running up on the stage. I was just trying to get out of there. I was opening doors, and next thing I know, I was on the stage with the band. I was just trying. I forgot about him. I just was running.
Well, to the point where special nights used to be Blacks' nights. And then the other times, well, first of all, it's depending on who's going to be there, like Fats Domino, Nat King Cole, something like that. That was the only time that I know that when you would see the whites commingle with the blacks.
They wouldn't be together with us. No, it would be just black entertainers and white entertainers, whoever. But that's the time when we would have to go to hear somebody other than little honky tonk club entertainers until much later on. But it was very segregated. Most blacks lived in South Phoenix. Nobody lived out here. There was nothing out here. Like when we came out here, this was just all desert or farms. In fact, Turf Paradise was like way out of town from where we lived at. There was no freeway there. That didn't even exist at the time. So you'd have to drive out there. But Turf Paradise was way out in nowhere. There were some areas where blacks who made a little more money had a little better houses, than the others, and then some houses were really, just dilapidated. You'd have to, most of the jobs here where blacks had anything was like for teachers. They had teachers made pretty good money, and they probably had nicer housing and stuff like that. But the average black, unless you were, well, they didn't have the big companies at the time when we first came, but there was no Motorola or Sperry or any of those at the time. Some of them worked at the hospital, some of them worked at the airport, but they had little mediocre jobs. Blacks did not work they had when we came here, downtown Phoenix was the downtown where you had J.C. Penney's and Montgomery Ward and Goldwater's, and all those stores were right downtown. And that's where you went to do your major shopping. And so they had buses that you could still ride the buses and all like that. But for the better part of it, blacks were all in South Phoenix. And some of them, like I said, had nicer houses than other houses. Some of them were just really mediocre houses.
It was depending on the income.
Yeah, because most of the time, the men didn't have really good jobs. They just didn't hire blacks at a lot of the places. And so, like I said, if you were laid bricks or something like that, you made good money, because some of our neighbors were in construction. They had their own companies that they had, and they worked for different people. So was what a lot of the men did, like construction work for their own black companies, and wives, they were lucky they taught school, and mostly at black schools. And other wives did housework for white folks in Camelback area and places like that. At that time, you had, like I said, fruit trees, orange trees were big business here, and I think Sunkiss, oranges, and they combined with I guess some orange companies in Florida, but they had, the Mexicans would come here just to harvest the fruits, and then at the end of the fruit season, then they would go away. They would go back to Mexico, and they had houses built just for them to live in, and they referred to them as derogatory terms like wetbacks, what they call them, and you know what they called us. But anyway, so they would be here like at harvest time for fruit, to pick the fruit. After the fruit season was over, you didn't see them, they went back to Mexico. You would see an occasional Indian downtown, but not very many of those either. And so a lot of blacks, they depended on public transportation because they did have buses and things running. Otherwise, for entertainment, it was like the little nightclubs that they had. And then they also had like the Elks Club, which was a popular place for people to go for entertainment. That was a better place to go to. And the Masonic Temple, that was big for a lot of blacks to go to that.
I was still pretty well, more or less committed to still in the service here at Luke Air Force Base.
And Williamsfield.
And Williamsfield. I was more or less like dwelled between the two bases to work on all the communication here at the control tower at Luke and the control tower Williams. And so we had our immediate families, like the kids being born here, and then after that all killed up, it was time for me to leave to go to my next destination was to go to Japan. And,
Well, when we first came here, he came to Luke Air Force Base. That was his original assignment. And he was there for, I forgot how long we were there. And then my brother Buck came, he lived with us. Like we came out here in March, and they came out here, I guess, in June, July, or something like that.
in the school.
And they lived with us, and then we were living in Glendale, on Glendale Avenue, and the guy that we rented from, he had an egg ranch and a cotton field around there. But we lived in a one-bedroom duplex.
We was the first rentals for this place,
Yeah.
and they was very skeptical about renting the place to us. Because, like she was saying earlier, that was housing more or less like on the prejudice side. They didn't want certain people to stay in one area, and that was it. But we was lucky enough to, on my way to the base to report in, we saw the sign. The guy was tacking it, putting the sign up saying, for rent. It was a brand new facility and everything else. And then on our way back from the base, after I did my process, came back by there, and the guy said, so we asked him, could we, this place for rent? And then he threw the word on us, but I'm not used to.
Well, he didn't come out and really say he didn't want to rent the blacks. He just started asking us a bunch of questions, and where we from, what we were doing out there, and all that. And we talked, and came to find out, we told him that, Harold was at the base, and anyway, I guess he was really sizing us up.
Originally, he's from New York.
But he found out when he was talking to us, and I told him, I said, oh, we just got married in New York. He's from New York. And he said, I'm from New York. And so and what's happening? I told him all about New York, what was going on there and all that. And he didn't say, he just kept asking us different questions, I guess, and he was trying to decide, what in the world am I going to do? I got a brand new place, and here come these black people, and they want to rent. Do I want to take a chance? And if I rent to them, will I ever get the rent to anybody else? Because he was going to build like a couple of more buildings there, And the very first one he put up, here we came. And so after we got to talking for a while, we talked quite a while. And he asked us all, we just had a conversation like anybody else, And I guess that was different because, there weren't no blacks out there except people who were picking cotton and stuff. And so we were just talking to him like anybody else, regular conversation. So after a while, he finally said, well, I think I'll take a chance on you guys. I'll go ahead and admit to you, I'll take a chance. And I think it was only because we had come from New York, you know, and he figured, you know, we sounded like we were halfway decent or whatever. And we ended up being his best renters. After that, after they finished the duplex on the other side, they rented to a white couple. And there was no comparison to us. We turned out to be the better tenants for them. And so we stayed there. I guess I was expecting with Deb, and we ended up buying a house in Phoenix. And I think they came and visited us when we first.
They were very upset for us moving.
They didn't want us to leave, but they knew we needed more space, and their place is too small. So that's how we ended up in Phoenix. We went to visit some friends one weekend, and on our way back, we passed through this area. And there was a for sale sign there. And we took the number down and called, and lo and behold, it was in a white neighborhood, mostly white folks. So there was a couple of blacks, I think, in the whole neighborhood. But as soon as they found out blacks were moving there, it was like white flight, because they did not want to live with blacks. So when we called and inquired about the house, the first thing they did, they said, oh yeah, they wanted to sell the place. I think the neighbors had sold their house, and of course they're going to follow suit, because the neighbors sold their house. It was a black family. They did not want to live next door to black, so they put this house up for sale. And as soon as they put their house up for sale, here we came and wanted to buy it. Well, I think they were that was a front, because they didn't have anywhere to go. When we told them that we wanted to buy the house, they said, well, we can't move right now. We don't have anywhere to go. You're going to have to give us 3 months or something like that to find somewhere to go. Yeah. And it was just like follow suit, you know. I guess they put on this big front, and the neighbors, they don't want to live there. They don't want to live there either. And so I think it was just all for sure, but then they got caught. So we had, even though we bought the house and we couldn't move in it right away because they had nowhere to go, they ended up moving to Maryville, because a lot of the neighbors there were moving to Maryville. It was a brand new area where...
new housing being built. And
it was white flight. So that whole area eventually, there were there was some whites still left there, because I remember when we moved down there, it was so peaceful and quiet. The neighbors, even the white neighbors that were there, they were very friendly. You didn't even have to lock your doors. You could sleep outside in your yard if you wanted to. They didn't care. It was just that quiet, and that kind of neighborhood. It was a really, really nice area. I think our house was like $65,000.
Like your first time in Phoenix?
And we had one of the larger houses on the area, because what happened, they had just renovated our house and they added a whole back portion onto it. So
with air conditioning.
Yeah, because most of the houses in Arizona at that time, they had swamp coolers. They did not have air conditioning units. And we had a huge carrier air conditioning unit where we could heat the house and cool it. And so our house never had a cooler on it. It always had this air conditioning unit, which was probably one of the only ones in that area that had one. All the other neighbors had. And the guy who owned the house, he was a plumber, so he did a lot of renovation. We had a huge part in the back. It was quite reasonable, and depending on where you rented from. We had a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, walk-in closet, so that was different.
But most houses was $55 a month. They had vac coolers. They didn't have no air conditioning units. The yard space was much smaller than what we had, and it was, of course, then you had to deal with the neighbors, and then they eventually started having those out of my own kind coming in and most deteriorating the whole entire environment. Well, other than that,
Yeah, so the schools were segregated at that time. Most everything was segregated at that time. When we decided to come back here, so your dad had just graduated from high school, and it's his first year of college at ASU. And we were stationed in Oklahoma City. And your dad, Harold, came back from Izmir, Turkey, and he got reassigned to Luke. And so when we came back here, our house was rented the whole time we were overseas. So we decided that we would not move back in our house because everything had changed a lot. The area had changed. So we stayed on the base at Luke. And what year was that? 1976?
let me put it to you this way. I was, after serving 3 tours in Vietnam, and in 1976,
What?
when I retired.
No, you retired later than that. 79, I think. 79, I think.
Well, anyhow, I had already had 28 years in the service, and I felt that this Gulf War come up, I was going to get involved in it. And you had guys dying from burnt out areas. They burnt the different jungles.
Yeah, Agent Orange.
Agent Orange.
Which did.
And,
Admit it was Agent Orange.
and I said to myself, if I stay here for 30, I would make it, because the way things was going. So I just made up my mind to retire at 28 instead of 30. But my goal was to stay in until I became 30 years of service. But in the meantime, the kids was having a hard time in schools, and we figured that Metamors would bring them all back home, put them in school, and out here in Phoenix. But Deborah was one of the stern ones. She was saying, I am not going back to Phoenix. So we told her, well, I don't want to say bye, but we just said, okay, if you want to stay in Oklahoma City, you can stay in Oklahoma City. And we came on here to Phoenix, and that's when I retired here in Phoenix at Luke Air Force Base. Oh, I didn't have no intentions of working at the time, and I had friends that I knew in the service that was here locally, and I walked down the street, and I think I was in front of what's the name of the store? It was a furniture store. And he's going, hey, Harold, what are you doing? You got a job yet? No. Well, would you like to go to work? No. And those guys preached to me for almost an hour to get me convinced that I should go back to work. And that's when I finally made up my mind at that time to go to work at this is Cox.
No, Story Cable.
No, it was American Cable.
No, it wasn't Story Cable.
American.
You went from Story Cable to American, but it was for Story Cable.
Okay. But anyhow, I went to work for them, and then as the company changes, this one bought this one out, this one bought that one out, And then that's when I wound up with Cox. And it was, under those different managements, it got really hectic because everybody was trying to outdo the other. Like saying, okay, you had it for a while, and I think I can do better. And you could see down the road that was coming where you either stayed on or get yourself another job. Well, I stayed on, and what came up at the time was NAFTA came into the picture. And that was for the government, took one of these cable companies down with their, so everything that we was doing, like what I was doing, the type of work that I was doing, like repairing the stuff, the government took it over. And that's how my job diminished at Cox. Because I was sending everything from that point on to Mexico. And I think, and also in Canada, that's where a lot of our equipment went to repair. And guys like myself got eliminated until I retired. The only thing in the military, I was more or less like an inspector, because I was on the IG team, Inspector General's team. And then when I came back to the States, I more or less was going to the different places like the control tower stations, checking out the facilities for the control towers, so the airplanes can fly in on certain frequencies and things of that sort. And I had to repair that equipment that I was inspecting. But
the communication gear and stuff too.
And repairing all the communication gear that they had at that time on site. Then they went from transistors to semi-transistors and stuff like that. So that's why they kept it, because they trained me, and after I got to train, and they didn't want to let me go. But the government changed their mind on that one. They were saying, it's costing us too much money to keep a guy like me around when they can send that equipment to Mexico and get it repaired cheaper. And that's where my job was eliminated. And things haven't changed much from that today.
Well, when we came back to Luke Air Force Base, like I said, Harold had just in first year of college, and Damon and Andre were going to Dysart school out there in Peoria out there. And so I was home, but the base was way from everywhere, it was up there. It wasn't as populated as it is now. So the base was way from everywhere. And so, but they had just started building houses in Goodyear. And so while on the base, I got a job working in a real estate office at one of the building places in Goodyear. And I did that for a while, and I learned a whole lot about buying houses and stuff like that, and strip annexing, how the things they were doing in Glendale was buying areas like the size of a footpath all around our area, and that was called strip annexing. So if you wanted to buy anything inside that area, it encompassed, they had it locked in, and so it was all kind of things going on. And I said, oh my gosh, I didn't know this went on in the real estate agency. But after a while, we decided that, we couldn't stay in the military forever, and Harold was thinking of getting out. So we started looking for a place to buy. And we looked at a number of places, and we ended up to this house that we're in here now. And my main goal was to make sure that the high school was some good high school in the area that we were in, because I think at that time the kids had to go to the school in the area where they lived at. So if you moved in the area, it could have been a nice area, but if the school wasn't a good school, well, too bad, you know. They took us down and told us to move down in high school, and so that was impressive at the time. And so we ended up getting this house here. And so after, but anyway, while we were at Luke, I got a job downtown Phoenix. And so I was having to drive from Luke Air Force Base all the way downtown on Central and Thomas to work. And so that's what I did. So that was quite a long drive from downtown Phoenix to where I was working on the base. So I kept that job. Arizona Health Systems Agency was the name of the job. And deregulated hospitals and places like that. And then we moved here, so I continued to work there. And it was a really nice job, and I really liked it. It had to do with regulating new hospitals and hospital equipment. And that job lasted until I think Jimmy Carter became president. And my boss was recruited to go to work for her in Washington, D.C. for President Carter. And he had an interim director while he was gone, and because Carter only served one term, a lot of people didn't care for my boss because he was very strict and thorough and no nonsense and all the greed and whatever was going on. He didn't go along with that, so they wanted to make sure that he didn't come back to the agency. So got very political, and as it turned out, when the war was over, he ended up in Nevada and never came back. Then our agency eventually dissolved, and I got a job working I went to work for Valley National Bank after that, after the Health Systems Agency closed. And Valley National Bank was bought out by Bank One, and then, eventually Chase got it. So I was the administrative assistant, on the administrative top side of the bank. One of my jobs, though, the bank cards that have your photo on them, that was one of our projects, and that had not been done before. And so my department did that. So I was also got to help out going out to some of the local banks and taking pictures of the customers so that it would be on their bank card. So that was something totally new. And I enjoyed it. It was banking. And after Bank One merged with Valley National Bank, that was horrible. Because Valley National Bank was, when I guess Bank One was out of Ohio, and they thought Arizona was a little hick town. And when they came here, they had an eye opener. Instead of, they would come from Ohio where the weather was horrible all the time, and they'd come with their golf bags, no clothes, just the golf bag stuffed with clothes in it. And then they wanted to send all of our employees to Ohio to work there while they came here. And the problem with Bank One and Valley National Bank, they were more or less the same in size. And I always said it was like two snakes trying to swallow each other. Valley National Bank had branches in Oklahoma, California, Nevada, New Mexico. We had branches, and we had grown that much, and we were very innovative. We already had our we were already with we were computer savvy way before we merged with Bank One, and Bank One had not become computerized yet, and we were already there. So when they came in making offers, everything they suggested, we would say, been there, done that. And we weren't just bragging, we had actually tried those things, and either we accepted them or they weren't, discarded them, or they weren't what we wanted. And they thought they were being very innovative, and so the relationship was not really a good relationship between the two banks. Bank One had probably more money, but Valley National Bank had more assets in different places, and we were just really far advanced from them, and so it was not everything became hostile, and it was kind of like the demise of the bank, and eventually Chase took over. But everybody who could retire early, they started retiring in big numbers, which is what I did. I didn't have enough time at the bank, and I wasn't old enough to retire, and so I said, as soon as I get to one of those markers, I am out of here. And so I finally got enough years in, and that's when I retired from working with the bank. But I really enjoyed it, but it had changed after the merger. It was never the same. And I decided, well, I'm not going to work anymore, I had to wait 2 more years before I could draw my Social Security. But then you retired, I retired first, and then you retired after. And then when he went down to draw his Social Security, I worked with him. And the lady after, she said, are you getting your Social Security? I said, no. I have to wait 2 more years. And she said, oh, let me check and see. If you retired, you took your retirement. I mean, if you drew your Social Security, how much it would be. And so she checked and she said, if you get your Social Security now, you would be making maybe like $4 to $6 more if you waited the 2 more years instead of drawing it now early. And I said, really? Because I didn't really need it, and I wasn't even thinking about it. But anyway, when she told me that, she said, well, if you decide you want to get the early retirement, you didn't have to check the end of the month, which was like so anyway, I was tempted, so I went ahead and got the early retirement for my Social Security. I never wanted for anything to do to keep me busy. It just attracted me. I became involved with military organization. I got involved with church work, charitable work.
She found work.
I just had more work than I wanted to do. I had more things that I wanted to do. And of course I got involved with my grandkids. But I never was lacking for something to do. I always had a plate full. Like I said, I got involved in church work and our retirement organization work. I was secretary, I was treasurer, and other things with TRIA, the Retired Enlisted Association. And we had a lot of activities going on all the time, with the homeless and the veterans and Veterans Hospital and stuff like that. And we had fundraisers. There was always something we were doing, charitable work. We went to a lot of their conventions, and I remember going to Colorado Springs and whatever. And then in the meantime, you had retired and working with your cable company, and they always, every year they had conventions all over the place, and so we always went to them. There was a lot of traveling, like we went to
different places we never been before.
Yeah, different Florida, and we did a lot of traveling on our own. We went to Florida a lot, and with cable companies, because every year they had a convention someplace. We went to Colorado,
Springs,
we went to
Tennessee.
Nevada, we went to Tennessee, we went to, like I said, we went to Florida a lot. Places we went on our own, we went to New Orleans twice. That was interesting.
The Bahamas.
We went on cruise. We went on several cruises. That was interesting. To Bermuda and and a lot of the cruises we went on out of Florida. One of our interesting places with the cable company went to their convention was in Philadelphia. That was really nice. So we got to go to see all the historical places, you know, and always got souvenirs and stuff where we went to. So that was really educating, stuff that I had read about in my history books and stuff. I actually got to go there and see all those places in Philadelphia, the historical places, you know. And that's where I first had a Philly cheesesteak sandwich. That was the original one, and not the kind that you buy now, but the original one. It was a little hole in the wall. A lot of the movie stars went there, and upstairs, and they were lined up outside. But anyway, I really enjoyed going there. And then I guess the most intriguing one we went to two. We went to one, I always wanted to go to Italy, to Rome. So we took a vacation, we went to Rome, and I did not like Rome. Everything there was falling down. I said, most dilapidated looking place, and all the notoriety it had, and everything there was falling down, you know. But we went to Florence. After going to Rome, we went to Florence and we stayed there for a few days. We went on the train where you could sleep on the train and everything that you had your quarters and all. But then when we went to Florence, we actually stayed in a hotel. And that was I just love Florence. It was a beautiful place and historical. And that's the first time I saw the trains had all the graffiti on them, but it wasn't the graffiti that you see here in America. It was like, that graffiti was like artwork. And they didn't clean it off the trains, they just left it on there. But it was mostly on the trains, and occasionally there was a building or two that might have had some, but they were like works of art, what they did. And we got to see the 10 Commandments, and they were like on one of the doors there, and one of the large churches. It took over 100 and some years to build. And now you can't go there anymore because of how things have changed in the world. They have it cordoned off and you're not allowed to go in there anymore. And I said, it was so sad, but we got to go inside. And I recall going inside, and they had a picture of Jesus Christ on the wall. And nothing was private parts and everything exposed. And when I came back, I asked my pastor, I said, I couldn't believe that they had this picture of Christ on the wall and everything's hanging out. And he looked at me, he just cracked up laughing. He didn't say a word, he never answered me. I can't believe it. You look up at the ceiling and see all this nudity.
Wow.
He just laughed at me. He didn't answer me at all.
I lost it.
So I really enjoyed that, you know, and the museum in Rome we went to, where they had all the chariot races and all that stuff was so dilapidated. But I understand that they had started fixing it up, the Colosseum and all that. I'm trying to picture all that, you know. We were in Florence, and I said, we had so much, so we want to go to this really nice restaurant before we left. So they gave us the name of this restaurant. It was posh. When we walked in there, they seated us at the table, and then the guy came up and he's playing the mandolin, serenading us the whole time. And they came up with the menu, and we looked at it, and I didn't recognize nothing on there, but I ordered something, and and they had steak and some American steak or something. Harold ordered a steak. I said, I came to Italy and I want some Italian food, and I am not ordering no American food. So I ordered something, which I thought was okay. So they came up, they brought the calves, the carrots of wine, and the bread. I mean, the bread was so hard you could throw it against the wall and play ball with it. But anyways, they brought a big tray of bread, rolls and whatever, and all this wine, and every time we had a few glasses, they came and filled it back up, and so when they finally brought the food up, they had this gigantic steak that Harold had. Oh, it looked so good. And then they brought my platter, it was a platter like so, and it was piled up like yay high with food. And I looked at it, and I didn't recognize nothing on there. So I got my fork and I looked at it, and on the top of it, it had something, and it was like making waves. And I looked at that thing and, ew, I am not eating that. I don't know what it is. So I picked it up and I put it over there in part of the bread tray. And then I looked at the other stuff. I didn't recognize. I don't know what this is. I am not eating this.
She was fired up.
I was looking at what I was eating. I was paying attention. And so I took that off and put it in the tray. And I went systematically, I went through the whole thing. And when I looked around, I had not recognized not one single thing on my plate. And I said, I'm not eating stuff I don't recognize, that looked decent for me to eat. It was something I was totally familiar with, and I was not eating that. It didn't look like it was edible. It was all fresh, beautiful, but I couldn't recognize what it was. So finally, I was down to the bottom of the thing, and there was a bed of creamy pasta. And that was the only thing pasta, I know what this is. And it had no taste at all. I'm just eating this after I cannot eat this. And so I looked at Harold, I said, how can I have some of your steak? No, you ordered your stuff, you eat it. And he wouldn't even give me a bite of his steak. So I just, I can't eat no more of the pasta, so I just got my roll and finished off with careful wine or whatever it was. So when we got ready to go, oh boy, I was stepping high. We got to the door and looked like the steps were that deep. So I'm stepping way down, I thought. But it looked...
Harold, you should have seen him.
A little tipsy, huh?
Oh yeah, and I was leaning against the wall all the way home. I was finding buildings and I was walking by the wall, And Harold was cracking up. And so the next morning I said, there was a McDonald's? Was it a McDonald's?
Yeah, McDonald's. Yeah.
There's a McDonald's down there. I am going to McDonald's. And I'm going to get me something because I am starving. So we got up to go down there, and the line is yay long. I guess a lot of other people had the same problem. We had to stand in this long line, but boy, that food tasted so good. So, but where we were staying at, the rest of the time, their food was really good, so we decided we would just eat at where we were staying instead of going out to eat, And so yeah, they had served food I could understand. We had like ham and eggs in the morning and danishes and stuff at the hotel where we stayed at. So I said, okay, we're gonna eat here. We're not gonna go on the town and try to, be exploratory.
I've been there before, so it was more or less like something new to her. But to me, because I had to fly in there to different places, and that's one TDY, the job that I had to do there in Europe.
Nice.
I was stationed in Germany, but they had me all over the country. I've seen Rome many times, but it was so amazing when I took my wife there because she couldn't understand all the people with no clothes on.
I enjoyed Paris, so we've been to Paris several times, and I enjoyed, and when we went to Paris, on the Champs-Elysees and, Eiffel Tower and all that. We went to
We ventured all stuff like
out to the markets and all and bought stuff. Where else did we go? We went to Brussels. We went to Amsterdam. I enjoyed Amsterdam. We went on the boats there on the canal, and the hotel we stayed at while we were there was right near where Anne Frank's lived at. But
So you guys did the gondolas?
yeah, we did that. We went to see all the flowers. Oh my gosh, the tulips were just gorgeous everywhere. It was very, very, we enjoyed it. It was really nice. We got a call from somebody at church that wanted to come and talk to us about Sudanese boys. And so I was chairperson of the administrative council, I think, at the time. And this lady came out and she talked to us. I had not even known much about them, the Lost Boys of Sudan. It was just something you saw in the paper and you just didn't pay much attention to it. But here it was, and so she was telling us, she was from Lutheran Social Ministries, and she told us that the government had contracted with three agencies here in America to relocate the youth from South Sudan because they had been staying in refugee places. One was in Kenya. They had a large place there. And what happened, the boys were now growing up to be young men, and there was nothing for them to do, and there's so many of them, and there was no future for them. So I guess they got together and figured they would try to find places for them all over, not just in America, but all over. And so the three agencies that our government contracted was Lutheran Social Ministries, Catholic Social Ministries, and RCI, I think it was. The three agencies here in Arizona. And so the lady that contacted us was from Lutheran Social Ministries. And so she explained to us that, I don't know how long, when she told us about it, how long they were already doing this in Phoenix with some of the white churches. It was all had to do with churches mostly. And so they thought that since the boys were African and we were a black church here, maybe we would be interested in, helping out. And so she told us we could choose to sponsor any number we wanted to. She suggested maybe we could take 6 of them. What they did, they gave them housing, they gave them a place to stay, but we had to be responsible for furnishing the place for them. So they renovated an apartment complex on Dunlap, 35th and Dunlap was an apartment that gangs had messed up and whatever. It was like, and so the government went in there and they renovated those places, and that's one of the main places they put some of the youth in there. So they told us we could choose any number we wanted to. So I wanted to go ahead and get 6, like she suggested. But a lot of the people they were hesitant to even get any. They didn't really particularly want to get any, but then we ended up agreeing to get 4. And I can understand. I said, well, here you have all the white churches who are accepting these boys, and we are black and we can't accept, them. But anyway, we ended up getting the 4. They would come in. They would send me a history. I got a thing, and they would send me a history of each boy, what their name was, if they had any kind of diseases or where they came from or whatever. A little history on them, and medical history and everything else. And then they would let us know when they would be arriving at Phoenix at the Sky Harbor Airport, and we could go down there and greet them when they came, and they would take them to the apartment, and all the answers that we had to provide bedding for them, They provided the beds, but we had to provide like the
Sheets.
they had the beds and the mat. We had to provide the pillows and all the bedding. We could provide furniture for the living room, dining room, whatever, clothes, food. We had to provide that kind of thing, but they gave them the apartment. And the thing was that they were going to be here like in 3 months. They were going to have jobs and stuff like that to go to work. And then the government would cease taking care of them. After that time, they'd have to get employment. That's easier said than done if you speak English very well. Some of them did and some of them didn't all that well. But that's where we came in. And so I found myself taking them to doctor visits, going down for all kinds of things, and then I had to go for meetings with the group from Lutheran Social Ministry. They had like business meetings that I had to attend, and they'd give you an update on what was going on and how many were coming in and whatever. So each time they'd send me a history of who was coming in and tell me what time they would be arriving, and I would announce in church who they were, when they were arriving, and if anybody from church wanted to be at there. But most times there's a whole lot of people from church would show up at the airport to greet them, and then we would pick them up and bring them to church on Sunday and do what we can to help them, But I more or less, because they were all, the church is downtown, where our church is at, and they were right on 35th and Dunlap. And some of us who lived in this area, it was easy for us to go there to help them out or take them somewhere, as somebody living all the way in Mesa or someplace in Phoenix to do, which some of them did do. Some of them got jobs at the airport, some of them got jobs wherever, in Scottsdale or whatever, working at the golf course. And like I said, all of them had like medical problems. In the meantime, they had to go to doctors and get shots and all this other stuff like that. So when you go someplace, they didn't have nothing. So I took them to get identification card, driver's license, and all that stuff like that. Took them to the dentist, took them to the doctor, took them to the hospital, took them for shots, all kinds of things. I was taking them all the places. They'd go to work and wouldn't have no way to get home from work. They'd need clothes to go to work or for an interview, taking them to buy clothes and all that other stuff,
Put me in the poorhouse.
No, but some of them had allowance. I know the first time I went and picked up some from the airport. And this one boy, he wasn't one of ours. But I said, okay, I picked him up. I said, you want to go to church? Well, yeah. So I went by to pick him up and take him to church. And that boy was smelly. Ooh, he was so smelly. And so somebody in church said, Sister Mervyn, sister, do you need some help? I said, no, and all of them needed dental work. And so I said no, and I decided this poor guy, because even the boys who we were sponsored, he was not one of ours, but he was one in the apartment there. Yeah. And so I said to him, I said, after church, I'm going to go home and make my dinner, and after dinner, I'm going to take you shopping. And I called the lady, the consul worker, my contact with Lutheran Social Ministry, and I told her, I said, this boy does not have any clothes. I said, the clothes he was wearing was the clothes he had in the whole time he was traveling. He had no clothes to change. The boy told me, he said, I don't have anything to put on. This is all I have is what I'm wearing. And I don't know how long he was wearing that, but it smelled like he was wearing it forever. And I said, so I'm going to go take him and buy him take my money and buy that boy some clothes. And she said, well, they have an allowance. And I told her, I said, you need to take him to get some clothes. And she said, it's Sunday. She said, I can't come today, but would you mind taking them? And she said, you are allowed to spend X number of dollars for each one of them shopping. And I took him to Kmart, I think is where I took him. Kmart or Mervyn somewhere, Kmart. And she said, you can spend X number of dollars for each one, and I will write you a check. I said, okay. So I put on my credit card. So we took him there, And I took them and I told them how much they could spend. And I forgot, it was $150 a piece or something like that, each one of them. So I made sure I got underwear for them, and t-shirts and pant clothes and change of clothes and all that. And after church. And so she did. She wrote me a check for the whole thing after that. But I was constantly taking them to the doctor, taking them to the dentist, and whatever. And they'd call me up. I need to go to the dentist. Even like I said, the ones that weren't from Wesley, they were from, some of them were Catholics, and I think he was one of the ones from Catholic. What Catholic social ministers did, they would put him in an apartment and put food in the fridge for him, and that they were on their own, because I guess the priest was in charge. And from the time they came, they never got any kind of care like our guys got, From day one, they just got the basic things, and you're on your own. Here's something to eat, someplace to stay, and that's it, And so our guys, you guys baby those guys. If you don't have nowhere to go, and you don't have nobody to call, you call the people you know. And so even the other ones, if they asked me to do something for them, if I could, I would, But that's how it worked out. And so eventually, they all got established and they all got older, and things just materialized. And like I said, a lot of things changed. And as they got older, a lot of them, when they came in, they went back to school. And I took several of them down to Glendale Community College to register. They were going to school there. And one of the guys, he went to ASU, and he was not one of the guys that we sponsored, but I knew him. And at one particular time, I did take him down because somebody from church bought overcoats for him, jackets, and I bought jackets for him and gloves and stuff like that. So I happened to see in the paper that he was going to be graduating from ASU. And I called him and I said, I saw in the paper where you're graduating. And he said, yes, would you come to my graduation? Because he didn't have nobody to come there. And I said, sure. And so Harold and I went to his graduation at ASU. And so anyway, I saw it in the paper and I told him, and he couldn't find a copy. I said, well, come over to my house and I'll give you my copy. And he came over here and I gave him my copy. I said, so you didn't go down to the copy center and make copies to send back to Africa to people there, And he did, after he graduated from ASU, he went to work for the embassy in Washington, D.C. And I never heard any more from him. Somebody told me he went back to Africa. But he was, out of all the boys that I came in contact with, he was one of the real serious ones. A really serious person. He always was.
Your boy ain't serious.
Who? Not Gabriel, no. but this guy, he was. He was very serious, And he was the one, I remember, he really scored one on me. I was telling them, I said, on Sundays, they worked different shifts and they had to work whenever they could. And sometimes, we would get some of them to go to church. And so I said, he had been to church at Wesley one time, and he told me he didn't like coming to church at Wesley. I said, oh, okay. So I was driving through the neighborhood on that Sunday, and I said, do you want to ride to go to church or something? And he said, no. I said, you need to be going to church on Sunday. He said, Mom, God is everywhere. And I said, I guess you're right. I don't have to go to church, but God is everywhere. Okay. Yeah. But like I said, he was a really serious person, and I don't know what the circumstances was, but that was really a critical time. And I remember one of the three times it was really sad. Right after they came here, on Camelback, and 27th and Camelback in that area. Some of the boys were living in houses up there, and someone was driving a car, and this boy was on the sidewalk, and he was really involved in a lot of programs trying to help some of the other boys. And I think it was a lady, she ran up on the sidewalk and ran him over and killed him. And that was so sad. And so they had the funeral at the church, the church that was working for the group that I was at, Lutheran Social Ministry. They had the funeral there, and they made sure that all the boys went to the funeral. And at one point in the service, they asked them to sing, and I think they sang Amazing Grace or something like that, but they sang this song. It was all in their language. It was just so moving, for that, and it was really sad. And then, what was the other time? I think Gabriel's cousin was here. He lived off of 59th near Northern, and he had a heart condition, and he was with, I think he was also with Catholic Social Ministries. And he had a real bad heart, and he passed, and so.
He did?
Gabriel's cousin. He passed, and so your dad and I took off and went to his service at the Catholic Church. I forgot where, someplace downtown. Whenever there were places, they all got together, because I think the church only paid so much for his funeral, and I think they had to come up with the rest of it, so all of them pooled their money. And I said, so what are you guys doing after the funeral service? They said, nothing. I said, well, we normally have a repast after someone dies, and so I will arrange it. So I arranged to do the repast for them where they were living at the apartment complex, and had all kinds of food and stuff. But I think some people helped me, and so we had that, and that was one of the sad things that happened. I always was intrigued about Africa. I always wanted to go. I wanted to know what it was like. And so it was on one of those times when we were deciding where we wanted to go. We had a timeshare, and we were deciding where do we want to go. And so I happened to mention to the person I was talking to arrange, because we were going on cruises and things like that. And I said, I really would like to go to Africa, but and he said, oh, do you know that we have a place in Africa you can go to? I said, you do? And he said, yeah. And so just mentioning that to him, and he was telling me that you can use your timeshare to go to Africa, for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however, And I said, really? I said, would you check it out for me? And
that was a mistake.
I just knew for the major places that you knew about, And so he said, yeah, we have this place, and it was in Kenya, but was out from Mombasa, way out there on the Indian Ocean, and I had never heard of it. But anyway, we ended up going there, and it was really, really nice. It was like I said, we had to fly from downtown to Mombasa, and then get a bus to drive us. It was like 2 hours, and boy, the road was rough out there, but it was on the Indian Ocean, and that was just really, really nice. It was just in the African area of the
line.
Yeah, and so we got to go to where the slave ships came in. They had one of the places still out there where they had bullet holes where they shot holes in the walls, and it was owned by the British originally, and they had started to convert it to a pub or something, but we got to go in and tour it, and go up on the deck, and we could see where the slave ships came and parked there to pick the slaves up, because it was this place where they loaded on there. And so we would, they had a restaurant there that we could walk down the beaches with snowy white. And they had Maasai warriors that were escorts to, they never talked to you, they would just walk and you would walk behind them and they never said anything to you, you know, along the beach for protection. And so that was really, really, really nice. So we sit up there and
Those
eat.
Maasai Moors was protectors like the police. They would let, as we was tourists, you know, nothing happened to us. And it was very interesting.
We had no idea what to expect because we arrived in Nairobi, which was downtown there, and we just was totally at a loss as to what to expect. And the first thing
You hear so many stories from this person you talk to, and that particular stories from another you talk to. So it was really put you in a sketch tactic. So well, got to keep looking around. Well, what's going to happen here? And but the people that we met and talked to, they really helped us out.
there was a lot of things, and the people are poor. And I was just struck by downtown Nairobi. We stayed at Hilton Hotel downtown. They had mostly, what do the African people do there to earn a living? I mean, they were just so, places where they were just really so poor. It was just awful, you know. The young men, like boys who came here, they would be sitting around on the walls and stuff down in Nairobi with nothing to do. They couldn't get no work to do. So they would sit there and they would have all kind of scams and things going on, trying to hustle and make a living. Most of the people down there, so all they would do, I guess the British and the Italians owned everything. They didn't own anything. So that was the sad part about it. Not that they didn't want to work, there was nothing for them to do to work, to earn anything there.
They was hustlers now.
Yeah, but that's how they made a living, was hustling, kind of whatever they could sell or whatever, But I was surprised because I expected them all to be dressed in African attire. And when we were in Nairobi, you didn't see anybody like that. They just dressed ordinarily, like we would dress, And so I remember when I was getting ready to come back, I said, I want to get some African dresses. And I asked the girl who was checking us out, and she said, "Oh, I don't wear that." She said, "That's what my mother wears." And she told me we got a couple of stores to go to buy some African dresses, but I ended up, I don't think I bought one, did I? I don't think I did. They were so expensive because all the people in Nairobi, they just dress Western style, the men and the women, I didn't see anybody with any African attire, having jeans and regular things like we have, And the girls and everything, the women, they just wear regular clothes. We didn't eat a lot of stuff over there. We ate mostly Italian food. When we were at the resort, we would go there every night, and they'd have dishes, African dishes, but they were supposed to be Italian restaurant. Like I said, they didn't have we didn't go to any African restaurant. Because like I said, I don't know, there probably was a few of them, but I don't know where they were, because they didn't seem to own much of anything there.
They didn't?
I mean, there were places there, but they would be working there, but they would be like Italian or something, And they had a lot of Italian things. So the resort we were at, it was all Italian, and the restaurant we ate every day at, it was Italian. And so we got to know all the cooks and stuff and the different foods. And
that's what I couldn't understand, a country like that. Everything like ownership is by someone else, not Africans. Even when the Russians came in and started building the roads.
No, the Chinese were building the roads. And they wouldn't even hire any of the Africans.
They wouldn't even hire the Africans.
Chinese were very selfish. They had all their own people there, and they built the roads look like our roads here, which is really nice. Because most of the roads in Africa, they were so bad, it was like manholes. When you put your car in there,
Your whole car
go down.
fall in the hole.
So the car they had were sturdy cars, well made, you know, taxis or whatever. But you didn't. They would have little. The people we saw, they had like little crafts and things they were selling, you know, like souvenir kind of things like that. Those kind of little hustles like that, I didn't see any of the men doing much work or nothing like that. They don't own anything. Here it is, their country, and everybody owns everything but them, you know. They had probably a few little things they had going on, but even like the gift shops, you know, most of the ones you saw them selling those stuff on the street or whatever like that, which is sad and it's still going on. And
it was pretty crafty in some of their stuff.
They made beautiful stuff, but it wasn't there. Even the wood carvings like I have in the living room there. They made gorgeous stuff, but it was somebody, you know, they were working with somebody else. And like they have wood carving factories. They were so talented. They could make all kinds of stuff out of things, you know. But they had to hustle it or something, or they made it and the Italian stores probably sold it, gift shops had it. So they probably weren't paying hardly anything for it, but they were just, oh my God, they were talented with the stuff they made, and wood carvings and stuff. I know we went to this one place, souvenir shop, where I was getting some of the things that we were getting, souvenir gifts like that. And I remember walking outside, Harold and I, and it was a really shaded area outside. And there were all these men out there sitting out there. And they were carving stuff like on the ground. It was like a factory, but it was just all shade trees and nothing. They were sitting on the ground. They would have logs, and they would be making the most gorgeous wood carvings you want to see. And other just wood, pieces of wood, you know. All of them have logs. They would just carve this stuff up. And you could not believe how beautiful those things were that they were making. And it was attached to this gift shop. And so, of course, yeah, they're selling stuff. You don't see no white people in there selling it. They're all selling it, but you know it's not their shop. It's all belonged to somebody else, and they had all this stuff in there. And that's how it was. You know, you go to the gift shop and you see all of them are selling stuff in there, like Kirks or whatever, and the stuff in there. But we come to find out they don't own that stuff. And there was in downtown Nairobi, there was this shanty town, and our taxi driver, he was telling us, he said, you see over there, that's where I live, and they have like 17 people using one bathroom. And this was downtown Nairobi, the shanty town. I think who went there? Did I think one of Obama's relatives lived over there or something. Half brothers or something, but lived over that place. And was it Serena or somebody? One of them went over there, and she went to that place. You know, and the guy was telling me, he said, "Oh, he said, you see right over there? That's where I live at. You know, we have all these people using one bathroom and whatever." And I felt so bad for him. He was our guy.
They didn't own nothing.
Oh yeah, like the Italians and all those people, they own all those places. They just work for them, you know.
They just love each other, that's all.
It's a lot of give and take, okay? There's a lot of give and take and a lot of compromise and a lot of, you know, trying to have respect for one another, and but mostly it's a lot of give and take. Sometimes you want to say something or do something, and no, I'll leave it be, you know. And then you try to be honest with each other, and Well, like I
That
said,
was not the deal when I first married her. I knew her for a long time before marriage, and I said, "This is the one." Because I sometimes sit back and I look at when my mother asked her to come to talk to her. I was overseas at the time, but I heard about it afterwards that my mother asked her to. She was working back and forth to New York, so on her more or less like coming back home to her trip from vacation. That's what it would call it.
I've been with Christmas time.
And then so my mother asked her to come and talk to her. And I said, "Oh my God, what my mother had to say to her."
All good things.
It was, you overseas someplace, and my mother told me that they was going to make this.
She had to wait me for lunch.
Yeah, whatever she would call it, dinner, lunch, or whatever. And I said, "What for?" And I said, "What my mother was going to be telling her about me." You know what I mean? And so to this day, I still never knew what they talked about. And it doesn't bother me now after all these years. Whatever she said was either good or bad.
Well, there's a lot of give and take, you know.
Give and take.
There are things, you're not going to agree on everything, but you try to have respect for each other. And you try to put yourself in their place sometimes and try to see the other point of view. And sometimes you just
have to overlook it.
Sometimes you just walk away if you know you regret it. You might say something you regret later, and you just leave it be and let it go till a later time when you feel you can deal with it.
And I always say to myself, I think it's to death do us part, and I took that very seriously.
But sometimes if you try to respond when you're really angry about something, you will say things you regret, and sometimes you just let it go, and then until you feel you can, reasonably talk about it without getting too emotional, That's easier said than done. It depends on what the situation is, but you try to look at it reasonably and you use your best judgment, Because sometimes it's better not to say anything at the moment if you figure you're going to explode or it's just. And then sometimes you just have to let it out.
A lot of that. I want to say what I want to say at the particular time, and I said, no, that's not the appropriate time. Because especially if two people are so angry, that's what causes the knock out and drag down, you know what I mean? Whereas you say, no, calm down, don't say nothing till a later date, when everything's down to kosher, then we can talk. But if both of you are all angry, you're gonna go to Fifth City and then nobody gain nothing there.
Oh, you better not ever get physical, because I know if you get physical, I'm not gonna win. But I will get you back. You better not overclose your eyes.
See, that's an evil person right there.
I know I
Sinister.
can't. I know I can't win if you get physical, but I will pay you back. Don't ever put your hands on me. No.
I heard that from an early state of my life.
I figure if you got to do that to get along, we don't need to be together. It's not worth it. No physical. I was already known when I married you.
I never thought.
You can't raise me over.
I never thought about ever trying to get physical with her. We both grew up in the same environment, and anything that we don't understand, we talk things over.
My parents never did that. There is no one answer. I don't know. You try to. I think whether you can afford good health care or not, you should try to have some kind of health plan because, you know, it's expensive going to the doctor. We were very fortunate because he had military, so we could always go to the military doctors. They weren't always the best doctors, but at least they were doctors, you know.
Yeah.
Some of them were downright lousy.
Title. You know, some of them just had a title.
And we were lucky that when we worked, there was usually a health care plan where we worked at, you know, which supplemented the military plan. There was good and bad doctors in all of them, you know. And so, like everyone else, at least we were able to go to the doctor. We always had, you know, had medical care available, which was a blessing compared to some people who didn't have any medical care at all. And even though we sometimes had to copay or whatever, or there were long waits because if you get like military care, you have to go in the base. Sometimes you have an appointment, but that doesn't mean anything. Or like when you go to the VA, you can spend a half a day out there. But all in all, I guess we were fortunate because we always had access to some type of medical care. We were never like on our own. And we did get to choose some doctors and some dentists, you know, that maybe our friends recommended or something like that. But basically, we did have access to some health care compared to people who had nothing. I know they were pushing acupuncture and stuff like that. We really never got involved in stuff like that. I mean, I've gone to like some seminars or whatever, got a lot of reading material, but listened to different people. But all in all, we never really got involved in a lot of that.
We kept moving.
It's not that, it's just that we just never got involved in it.
I'd have thought we was intelligent enough to know when there was a good doctor and there was a bad doctor. And that's how it is in this life.
Well, sometimes I did, get involved with the doctors on TV that you see that they push all the stuff that you can do this and this treatment. I remember when the doctors they were talking about neuropathy, and I went to check to see if I really had that, and it was one of those things on TV that you heard about. And of course, yes, they so they gave me this test, and right away, how do you know if this is the case? And well, you should know. Well, right away, one of my feet felt good coming home, and the other never changed. There's no change in it, and it hasn't changed to this day. And end up going for the treatment, and it was expensive. And what I found, not just the treatment, but they don't just give you the treatment. They have things on the side that they ply you with. What it turned out to be, I got the treatment, but in the meantime, you had to buy all these vitamins, and the vitamins were very expensive. And so I think that is like a diversion. They pull, you go have this test, and you have the test for maybe like a half an hour or something, and then you buy all this expensive medicine that you have to take, supplements you have to take in the meantime. And so anyway, I went through that treatment, and then I renewed it again, and then after, I didn't see that was that much, you felt good while you were having it, but there was, afterwards, you didn't see that much benefit, but they continued to try to get me to buy all these expensive vitamins. So, I guess I wised up and figured, hey, they're selling vitamins, And occasionally when I see similar shows on TV like that, I think, oh no, been there, done that, So I almost started to do it yourself, instead of paying somebody when more or less what you need. So I started doing that, but I never went to get acupuncture. I went with my sister one time to get that because she was into that. And some people tell me there is a benefit to it, and maybe there is, but I just never. I just strictly went to the base for all my medical, even though I lived in the Japanese community. I guess there wasn't that trust there then, you know. We would buy a lot of things, but when it came to medicine, no. They would have some Japanese doctors at the medical facilities on the base, and I used those. The same in Germany. When we were there, they had a lot of German doctors at the military hospitals that, you know, I frequented, and dentists and everything else. But if you weren't on the base, I didn't go off the base to the ones. I only had the ones that were connected with the hospital on the base.
Since I retired, went back. Before retiring, I looked at what I'm going to do when I retire. And the whole thing that came across my mind is what I might wanted to do. Go and seek this common labor or something of that sort. Then came across to me and I bought that apartment complex. I thought that was something to spend my time on. It did, and it still do that. I want to get rid of it. But anyhow, when you know your time is coming up to retirement, it is a big question. What I'm going to do, get another job similar to what I've been doing while I was in the military, just going out and doing hard labor of some sort. But I was fortunate enough to stay within my field that I was in the military. But now, since I'm out of the military and I'm more like out of civilian life because I took another retirement over the years, and it's just relaxing.
Well, most of the apartment kept you busy all the time until a couple of years ago. You were doing a whole bunch of stuff over there.
That's what I was saying. But now, after my age, I sort of wind down to the point where a lot of things I would like to do, but I'm not capable of doing it. And,
you also was involved in a lot of, you know, church work too with trustees years ago. We used to participate in a lot of church activities. I mean, not religious service, but I mean being a trustee with all the physical building kinds of things and repairs and whatever to make sure everything was working, and if something broke down, fix it, and you know, those kind of things. So he was involved in that a lot. So was I, with a lot of church activities and stuff. Until just recently.
Yes. I'll put it this way. I like watching Western. My wife don't want me to watch Western.
Not as many as you. The good thing about Western is that you know how it's going to end. It's going to end okay, you know. There is not all that profanity. It's usually pretty much a clean show, and you more or less kind of know how it's going to end, and you enjoy it, even the ones that end sad or something. But it's a clean show. You know, you don't have all the cursing and the carrying on and the nudity and all that stuff. So I think that's why he enjoys it. But I occasionally to watch it. I enjoy it too, you know. Not like a lot of the movies that you see now. So a clean, relaxing show.
And then more or less, if you look at a Western show, most of them, they start out, have their problems, and people having their problems. And then in the end, everything comes to a climax. Either it's a wonderful climax, or bad.
And he also likes boxing, and he likes we watch football or basketball. Those were the sports when he was going to school. Was more or less football and basketball. That's mostly all we had. And the occasional tennis. And he used to play tennis when he was in high school. A little. They didn't have really good tennis courts and stuff. He played football a little bit, but he had to work mostly, so he didn't get to participate in that. But you never played basketball.
Yeah.
But even in school, you took shop and stuff like that, where you learn how to build stuff.
And that's what I am today. That's why when I got out of service, some of the stuff that I used to do in my shop work in high school, I can relate now. A lot of things come back to me, and I can do some of the things that I got out of school. I got my little shop over there now, but my wife has it to the point where I can't get inside of it because she got all of her stuff.
Need storage room. I have some place to put my stuff. I have no place to put my stuff.
So back to that statement you asked me about how we got along all these years. so sometimes you have to give in. And that's what I've been giving in for many, many years now. I can't do a lot of things I'd like to do, but I can't do it because other things crop up to make the issue there.
There's give and take in everything. I want my children to be happy with whatever they do. I want them to be able to be self-sufficient and take care of themselves. But I also want them to not have to work so hard that they can't enjoy life and be happy. They have good friends. I want, like I said, I want them to be self-sufficient, be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and not have to expect a handout from anybody. And I'm pretty much, I'm happy with my kids the way they are. I mean, nobody's perfect, we all make mistakes, but all of them, and my grandchildren too. Yeah, because, I think when you grow up and you see from an early when I grew up, my parents always tried to have something and to be self-sufficient, to be decent people, hardworking, and I they didn't have to tell me. I was just aware of how growing up, even though my parents died at an early age, they in their early ages they tried to be self. My dad always. We had our own home. They built a brand new house. My dad always had transportation. He always shared with other people what he had. My mom did the same thing. She was a beautiful homemaker. She was, did things on her own. And she was very creative, a beautiful cook. I never learned how to cook very much because I didn't have the opportunity. But I remember how she did things, and and how they treated people, and that's nobody had to tell me that. I was just self-observing, and I always tried to be like that. If you want a friend, be a friend. If you have to not expect people to always do for you, but you have to do for other people. And whatever I did for anybody, I never expected payback. I mean, I've had a lot of people that we provided for or given a place to stay. I just did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. I never expected anybody to pay me back or anything. In fact, a couple of people paid me back some things, and I was shocked. And I never expected nobody to pay nothing back because when I did it because I thought it was necessary and they appreciated it, and that was the end of it as far as I was concerned, And I've always tried to, like I said, if somebody was in need and asked, or if I saw something, I was always willing to share because no, that's the way I was brought up, you know. And so I tried to not preach to my kids, but I thought they would see how we did things and do it without being told, you know. Do this or do that or whatever. Well, you grew up in an environment all the time, and you saw how mom and dad did things and how we treated people. And I figured,
But our kids don't see it that way.
you don't know what they sometimes you think, but you never know, you know. Like I said, I always did things because I thought it was the right thing to do, and I never expected to be paid back for anything I did. And if I did, well, fine. But if not, you know, I wasn't expecting it in the first
But
place.
they all have a mind of their own.
And I just want my kids to be successful and be happy, but not be so overbearing, and all you want to do is be greedy and, you know, and not a decent person and not help other people if they needed help and whatever. And I know sometimes people can take advantage of you and they think you're a sucker if you do things for people and try to be nice, and they'll use you. But the majority of people are not like that. And like I said, I just always tried to raise my kids so they could see how I did things and be an example. And I never have to do this or do that, do the other. You should treat people this way. I figured, well, you see how I treat people, and you know, I'm setting an example for you. So
I do have hopes for them, but it's a lot of times to make the hope doesn't fall in the right direction. They have their own minds, means, and it's hard for Mom and I to make changes in those directions sometimes, because I know sometimes she gets very bitter at some of her when her kids, when they don't do like she wants them to do. Even myself, I try to tell them, I said, "Won't you do it this way, do it this way." No, I'm not going to do it this way. They just flat out won't do it that way. And it's hard when you would like, well, you got to look at it too. We brought them in this world, and we expect them to follow the footsteps of me and Mom. But they got their own minds, and they try to figure that what they're saying and what they're doing is right for them, and we're not going to make any changes. But like she was just saying earlier, regardless how old we get, as long as I'm here, I'm going to still preach. This is not right, this is not right, and if I can make the necessary changes to make their lives better, I'm going to try.
Well, it's different. Depending on, you know, sometimes your children are not in a position to do for you. Maybe they would like to, but they're not in a position. But it doesn't always mean that they have to take you in or move in with you. Sometimes, you know, just checking on you, like when we had the virus, you know, and Dad and I were quarantined in here. Well, I would expect my kids to call every single day and say, "How you and Mom doing? You guys need anything?" I know they can't come in here and do for us, but we were in a bad position where we could not go out anywhere and nobody could come in here. But people could bring stuff and leave it outside the front door or something for us. And that was the only way we would be able to get anything. And so I really expected that they didn't always do that. I mean, like I said, I know my niece, she called and she'd come over here and bring stuff outside for me. Sometimes kids are unaware they never had to do that before. It's something totally new because they're so used to me and Dad being self-sufficient. So they think, oh, mom and dad, we don't get sick. They can get sick and we do for them, but for us to get sick, that is something totally new. They have not experienced that before. And I think a lot of children feel that way about their parents. They're so used to mom and dad doing things for themselves and not having to depend on them, and they think that goes on, and then eventually when something happens, it just never crossed their mind. It's not that they didn't want to do it, but I don't know. Sometimes as people live longer and get older, you have to rethink things, and just say, how you guys doing, check in. You don't have to come over, but call and see if you need anything, how's everything going, You never know.
They would call and ask us how we're doing. That's the extent of it. They don't expand saying,
do you need anything or whatever?
They don't bring that point up because they figure we got everything we need here. That's the way of thinking, really.
Because we've always been so self-sufficient, but life changes, and I think that's what a lot of older people face. They raise their kids, and then when you get to the point where most of them are left by themselves or something, and the kids don't realize that they need to check on them, or just to say how you doing or whatever, you need anything. Or eventually, sometimes parents don't want to bother the kids and they say, oh, fine, and they're really not. And sometimes kids need to just pop in and see for themselves, well, how mom and dad doing, or mom doing or dad doing, without.
That's old-fashioned.
Old-fashioned.
But old-fashioned sometimes is good. Sometimes it's still good, But
don't be a pain in my side.
no, but I think most parents do not want to be a burden on their kids. That's why you try to make sure that you have health care and conveniences and things like that for as long as you can. Maybe get to the point where...
the two of us have been very efficient to the point where we would always stand on our 2 feet, and we never had to depend on them for anything. So now, when we have these crises like we had the other day, they didn't know what the hell to do.
But then a lot of kids don't live close to the parents either, like they used to do years ago. Parents live away from the kids, Look at Evelyn. Her kids, when her son is in Texas and daughter's in England, but her daughter and son, they made sure that they know what's going to do. The daughter came in and she put video in, and mom got to check in every day, and she got to actually physically see her. They take turns coming. The brother comes and stays like 2 weeks, and she'll come and stay 2 weeks, and they have a system. Even though their mom's by herself, she's really not by herself. They check on her every day. So those things, it's due to everybody, Thank goodness there are a lot of conveniences now.
We have the same thing. That telephone rings, pretty near how many times a day? Deborah's calling, Harold's calling. Harold won't call as much as he used to, but Damon, he calls.
Damon will pop by. We'll make sure he comes by here. And your dad, he usually comes by on Sunday or something. But Damon will pop by during the week on his day off. They don't call every day. Because I know they got busy lives. Sure, I know.
They got lives of their own too.
Sure, yeah. But it's an adjustment period that everybody has to get used to, depending on the needs and the circumstances,
We just had a crisis the other day that we got the virus.
But that has upended a lot of people because, you can't always do what you want to do when something like that happens. For health situations, So. But as far as aging, that's something that.
I'm looking for some more.
I know, but you just never know. That's why I guess when parents start aging, the kids need to pay more attention.
And keep on what you're doing, and I'll watch and see. And if there's any time that I feel that you're going in the wrong direction, I'll tell you about it.
Well, you try to provide for your kids as best you can. I don't think you should spoil them and go overboard. That can be good, that can be bad. Try to be a normal life. I think the most important thing that parents can do is find time to spend with their kids. And I think we did a pretty good job of that. Whenever our kids were involved in whatever they were involved in, we were always there. Whether it's like elementary school, from kindergarten on up, whenever our kids had something, we tried to do that. We even tried to support you guys when you were coming up, the grandparents and all. And I think parents need to be involved in their children's lives and their grandchildren too. You try to spend quality time with them, not smother them or be a nuisance, but try to find time to spend with your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. So they're aware of you and you can enjoy them, and they can enjoy you too as long as possible. Do things together as a family. You don't have to be extravagant, but find quality time to spend together. And I don't think parents need to be a nuisance, grandparents need to be a nuisance, but you need to be there so that the kids will know who you are and what you stand for. And you should always be supportive as much as you can. I've always, when my grandkids were involved in something, if I could do that, I was there. But we see, you guys are sort of scouting things and everything, and school things, and I think that's important, It's not just the parents' place to be there. Sometimes parents have a hard time too, because they're so busy working, trying to make a living. They don't have sometimes the time that the grandparents have. Grandparents sometimes have more time than parents have.
Not like you.
Huh? And I think you need to be there so the kids will know who you are. And it's always fun, when the grandparents have said, okay, I raised my kids, and now you raising your kids, so now I can really enjoy my grandkids. Because you don't have to worry about all the other things that parents have to do. And a lot of the time, parents are so busy making a living, they can't do a lot of things on their own either, So, but I think quality time is very important.
I'll put it this way. The kids today, they got too much opportunities like TV sets and they got guidance from many, many directions. And for you as a grandparent or whatever, or parent, it's pretty hard to raise the kids today as they are. Because the TV puts too much on the TV about things that is either right, wrong, and they got ears and they got eyes, and they can see for themselves how things are. So it's pretty hard to bring up kids these days on your own. Think that they're gonna follow your footsteps, everything you say, do, and what have you. No, they have a mind of their own, and all you can do is maybe, like I was saying, over my point of view, I tried, and sometimes some of the things that I've said and hope to tell my kids, they go wrong in direction because they got their minds made up of what direction they want to go in the beginning. And that's just how it is. We got too many parents out said to kids these days. Men and mom, and the kids, other parents, the TV set, and there's a helping factor in guiding your kid in many, many directions. I don't tell my kids like you or whatever. I said, I don't like what's happening. Let's go. Once you guys go out on the street with your gang and riot to make things better. That's not the right direction.
You have to bring them up from the beginning, teaching them what's right and what's wrong. And
but you're gonna have their peers.
They listen to a lot of their friends and whatever, and you don't know what their home life is either. But you have to remember and remind your kids, that our family doesn't do things that way, or we don't do things that way. If their parents let them do that, fine, but you can't do that. You're not supposed to be doing that.
That don't say that they all take heed.
They won't always, no. If other kids will persuade them to do things and get in trouble. That's, I guess, the fact of life. But basically, if you instill in them in these things in them at an early age, and they get to observe how things in their family were compared to other families, sometimes kids will make the right decision. Most times they will.